Hi everyone, and welcome to the 10th user forum with Eigen and Eigen Ingenuity. I'm delighted to have with me my co-hosts and panelists, Denise Gonzalez, Joel Chacon, Andrew Orvis, Miles Daffim, and Ben Hickey. They'll be presenting some of the case studies later on, along with some of our guests from operators. So we've got a lot to cover in this user forum. We've cut it down to an hour to try and keep it efficient on time, so we're packing stuff in. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to some of the new features, and actually I'll talk about the map component, and then Miles and my colleagues will talk about some of the others. Just to look at the history of the development of Ingenuity over the last few years, the pace is accelerating. So this chart here shows both the tasks or the tickets we've been doing on the product and the number of bug fixes between user forums. And you can see that although we didn't have a user forum last October, the pace is accelerating. We've done more tickets and almost more bug fixes, but the bug fixes are staying relatively constant compared to the tickets. So that's good because it means that the progress is delivering usable features. So a couple of things we're going to demo today, or more than a couple, but I'll show the map component. We've got a new feature with control groups, and there's also the fact that we can integrate apps as plugins. This is really quite significant behind the scenes because it means we can do custom apps now very quickly and make them look completely seamless. And we've also got some great improvements around things like the process graphics. There's a much better workflow. It's much easier to make graphics with things like snap to grid. And the logbook component has now been deeply integrated with things like the events. And we've got a demo of that coming later on as well. So the new map component. This has actually been around for a little while, but we've now got it working and we have it up on our demo site, which I'll show you in a second. It uses GeoJSON data sources. You can zoom in and out. You can add it to any dashboard and it updates in real time. So this is a demo I've made of the UK surfers against sewage data, which plots sewage discharges and recent discharges in the UK. So it's not a pleasant subject, but unfortunately quite a topical one at the moment in the country. So here, these orange dots are recent sewage discharges and the red dots are ones that are actively discharging. So we can zoom in on the map here and you can pinpoint the location, you can click on things, and it gives you the additional properties that are available in the GeoJSON file. Things like the location, company discharging at lat and longitude. We're looking to expand this so that we can integrate hyperlinks and we can format it better. So you could have things like live data, sensor data, maybe a spark line in there as well. This runs from a data source, the live sewage map data source. It uses an ArcGIS service that's been created by the Surfers Against Sewage organization, and conveniently it gives data in this GeoJSON format. So if we do a test, you can see here's the raw data that comes in, and these properties, these are the things that show on the pop-up. So any data source you can make that provides data in that compliant format can be displayed on the chart. So I'd now like to hand over to Miles, and he's going to talk about the process graphics improvements.
Thank you. Today, I'm just going to run through a quick update on the refinements and workflow for building process graphics. So like Murray said, we've got some really nice new features that enable the graphics to be built faster, they're more seamless, and you can interact with them in a more efficient way. So this is a demo that I built before the session. So this is a simple process overview of our demo oil rig, which runs a little simulation in the background. So on the left, we have a couple of separators with a gas export train and an oil export train. So this is all built using standard components within Ingenuity. So all the process values, so let me just pinch the zoom here, can be defined using our value widget on the right-hand side here. So I'm able to place whatever tag I want in there, which will then bring in the current value or historic values to that component. Multistate, which is a great new addition. So here, again, I can pass in a mimicked valve percentage. I'm able to then define numeric thresholds using these operators. So on this case here, I've got greater than 5 or less than equal to 5. So green or gray, which is really neat. Let's just scroll down to one of my pumps at the bottom. So again, not only can you use valves, but I'm able to then do that on different pieces of equipment. So any piece of equipment that's on the dashboard, I can then align with some multi-state, which could either be defined from a simple current value or a calculation. Within the separators here, I'm able to display some really nice looking level gauges. So I can click on that. I'm able to define multiple values within a single level. I've got configuration of my min and max. I can then also configure how I want my scale to be visualized, allowing me to sort of adjust the colors and make it just look a little bit more seamless. Within each of these components, you've got your click to trend, bringing up the historical plots. On different components, you can configure how that plot will come up. So here on this level gauge, if I click that, that actually comes up as a stacked area, which gives a little bit more detail. Along with current values and charts, we also can configure this asset widget. So let me just zoom in here on here. So this is showing the equipment tag of the separator V02100. This uses the asset widget bottom left here, which allows me to then get contextualized information about that piece of equipment. So let me click on that. That brings up the common menu, which goes to, in our case, the graph database, the knowledge graph, bringing in any properties, measurements, documents, so I can gain access to, if I click on this one, it'll open any reference document. So this is just an example PNID. I've got links and any related assets. So all pieces of equipment that I display on my dashboard, I can then add that contextualized info, allowing a little bit more detail to be shown. Another thing that's really great is the ability to overlay charts onto these dashboards. And it can be very simple sort of time series line graphs. Here I've got flow rates for my booster and export pumps. I can click to trend to pop them out to gain more detail, but also I have my XY plots for my export compressors. So I'm able to show the curves of the compressor and see where the operating point is right now. I'll just show how easy that is to configure as a user. So within the chart component, I can pop it into edit mode. So I just zoom in there for you. I can just copy and paste my curve data, my reference values directly from an Excel spreadsheet into my dashboard. This can also be driven via a data source if they're stored centrally. The operating points can be configured in a really easy way. So you just have to define your X and your Y. So here I've got my volume flow, and I've got my polytropic head. From that, I can set the color of my operating point. And then within that, I can then specify fade with time. So most recent point will be a solid red, further back will be more transparent. And then I also can then change the most recent shape of my operating point. So in the past, you'd have to add 2 points and then differentiate the color. So now you can do that in a single workflow. So some key improvements that you as users will notice is the big one, which is snap to grid and show grid lines. In the past, you were having to align things up by zooming in and trying to work it out on a pixel level. Now with snap to grid, everything is super seamless. This works on basic shapes, values, and lines, basically anything that can be drag and dropped onto the dashboard. Alternatively, once you've got more than one shape on the dashboard, you select that and you've got all of your distribution settings here on the left. So I can do a line left, a line right, and then within that works as well, not just on shape. So if I've got values added, I can then distribute them horizontally and vertically, allowing the dashboard to become much faster to build and making sure everything lines up to the pixel level. Within the dashboard here, we have a few additional settings. So fit screen, which means that although I've built this dashboard in a scaled mode, the dashboard will always scale to your screen size. But if I start to build content further down, it means that then no matter what screen this opens on, it will always fit and you won't need any scrolling. Additionally, you have the max width parameter. So if you open it on, say, a 49-inch widescreen, you can say, well, certain dashboards, I want a max width of 2000 pixels, which just adds to the ability to make things look much nicer. Also, the grid settings here, the snap can be configured. So that can go right down to a 1x1 grid, or in this case, I'm using 5x5, but you could go 10x10, or you could have a smaller X than Y. You could do a 5x15, for example, depending on what you're trying to create. Layers. So as you drag and drop different graphics onto a dashboard, you can use layers and create different groups. So if a equipment symbol is not available in the left-hand menu, you can then build your own here. So at the moment, I have built a compressor icon. Let me just zoom in there for you. Here, I'm just using a few different shapes, and then using the right click, I have the layer option. So I can bring things forward and back and then apply that into a group, so that then that equipment can be then reused. And that works for all different types of shapes. I can group lines, graphics, and widgets all into single groups that can then be copy and paste and used around on different dashboards. As well, you can add this to the basket so that you can add your custom shapes to your basket and you can then go and use those on additional dashboards. What else has changed? We've improved the way you draw lines. So if I select a line here, one thing that we've added that you probably were aware is the fact that lines you can now do the corners within a single line. So if I just draw a line quickly, make that orange for you. Double clicking on it creates a break, and then holding shift will ensure all the corners go to 90 degrees, meaning that you get perfect right angles on your corners, meaning that you don't have any single pixel gaps or any pixelization on your graphics. Another really cool features is the ability to do multi-state on lines. So if you've got graphics where the lines need to change color based upon logic, you can then configure this in the exact same way that you would drive multi-state on valves or equipment runtime. So if I had a valve between or thresholds, I can have it go red, green, blue, depending on what the value outputs. Other things that we've improved is the usability of the dashboard. So now with pinch to zoom, in the past, it would zoom your whole browser. Now this is fixed within your dashboard window. So this works both in edit mode and view only mode. So if I take that out, I can then pinch to zoom on my different dashboards. So if dashboards are of larger scale, then you can pinch to zoom to get clear insights into individual pieces of equipment. And the last feature that we've added is these visibility toggles. So up here, I've used a few page variables, which Denise will explain in a later demo, but I can then toggle this off to then drive a visibility parameter in my widget. So if the graphics become larger and you want to show different content for different groups of users, these toggles can be added to dashboards to then hide or show different content. In this case here, not all of the engineers are going to be interested in the operating points of the compressors, so users can come in and hide those, and those variables can be set to be default true or false. In addition to these dashboards, we've improved the way we build asset dashboards. So if I just come up here, this is a way that you can then go and build templated displays. This connects directly to the knowledge graph underneath, similar to the common menu, giving you access to different variables and different measurements within different pieces of equipment, allowing you to build templated displays. But yeah, that's it from me within my short time frame. So next, I'm going to hand over to Andrew. He's going to be talking about some updates that he's done to the logbook on a really interesting use case. Thank you.
So I'll be walking us through our new developments in our logbook and our ways of interacting with it. We have new user tools, which will allow you to much more easily visualize and trend specific data out of entries in a logbook. And more recently developed, we have ways that you can create inputs straight out of a dashboard into shift log events. This all came about during our developments with Okea, who have kindly allowed us to share it in this user forum. Okea came to us wanting a better way of tracking their hydrocyclone movement. So they have two separators, which would be piped into 6 different types of hydrocyclone via manually operated valves. And originally they would track any status change in these movements by hand, and they came to us looking for a better way to record and track this. So we moved that process into our Ingenuity shift log, where they could record these status changes via a form. But building on this, we wanted to improve it and make it easier for the users to use. So we've developed user tools that will allow them to do this via a dashboard. Not only that, it'll allow them to view the data, both historically and the current status. So if I just move over to Ingenuity dashboard here, we can see our current dashboard. This going left to right. So on the left, we have what Miles has just walked us through. We have a good use case here of process graphics. We can see the 2 separators on the far left and these 6 hydrocyclones, some of which you can see are greens. So as Miles walked through, we have numeric thresholds. These ones specifically are driven via data tags from the logbook. If I click on this, we can see down here, we have a tag shift log B hydrocyclone, and that will drive these. Then we have here the charts, which can trend historic data, and we have some traffic lights to really help at a quick look see where and which hydrocyclones the test separators are piping to. Then on the right side here, we have the input section. So at the top here, we have the date and time. This is currently set to current time, but you're able to say if you want to backfill or add historic entries into the shift log, you can configure them here. Then below that, we have drop downs, one for each hydrocyclone, which gives the user the capability of selecting where they will be piping to in that current update. And then we can simply click submit here, and you'll see all our graphics will immediately update to display the current status. Even these inputs will update upon a refresh to make sure it's always at the current state. So any user will know where it's at, they have historic trending, and they can have simple inputs that also allows for a lack of human error. So they won't be going into their comment section of the form and writing, they're not quite sure where it's going, or maybe something wrong like that. A lot of this is achieved through page variables, one of the things that gets many use cases, which we can drive into our dropdowns, and our submit button here, we're allowed to group, and it's fully configurable, so we can package any kind of event type. This is all the hydrocyclones, labels, and values, and that can be created into a logbook entry.
I'm going to be talking about the new control group functionality, or well, widget that we have in Ingenuity 7, and kind of explain it and how we use it in this example dashboard. So this dashboard, it has, this table, and it shows you the entered train departures from their API. And here you have just basically two selectors, one like the from station, and then the last destination that you want to, and then it filters this table towards that. So the way that this dashboard is working is you can click here on edit mode, and then here we see that it's, it has some text in the dashboard. It has the table component, and it has two main variables. Basically, this table, if we go to source, we'll see that it has two main inputs that it needs, the departure station and the destination station, basically. So this is set here under variables. Here you can create different variables, and there's different types of variables. In this case, this one is select type, in which you just give different options, like the different options to pick from, separated by a comma. But there is also multi-select, string, numbers, etc., depending on what you need. So in this one, since it's the departure station, we just use select, and we select the station that we want to have as departure station. And then below that, we have another variable, which we call destination. This one comes from the data source output. So in here, we just select the source that we want to gather this from, which would be in tour departures in this case. And then we connect it to the first variable that we created above, which is departure station. And we do it that by clicking here and then select departure station. That's it. And here it's what you want to use as the Y output. In this case, if you click here, then you can see what this particular source has as output, as possible output. So in this case, we just select destination, but you can select any other depending on what you need. And then you would just click on save. Then the control group widget is this one right here. So then you can just drag and drop to the dashboard. Here I have it here already. If you go to format, here you'll see different options to format this on how it looks and how it behaves, like the size and orientation, if you wanted to update it immediately, or if you want to have a submit button that you click after you make the selection, etc. In this case, we're not showing a button, and we're updating immediately after this time. The important thing is here under controls, here we have selected a control group, and the control group you can change here. Next to the variables, we have control groups, and here we can create a control group in which we just add the variables that we have created in the previous tab. So there we have our two variables, and we can call this control group with a particular name that we identify. This is working on a dashboard by dashboard basis. So you will only see the variables and the control groups that are present in this dashboard. So now you can see here all the list of the control groups that you have, and then you attach to that. And this will create these two selectors that we have. Once that we have that, we just check that our dashboard is controlled with the variables that we had created already. Then we can just save our dashboard and then start selecting the two variables that we have set. And that's it.